Welcome to our executive speaker series. We're thrilled to have a Miami alum, Aaron Ryan. We'll introduce him in a second. I'm Mark Rubin, the Dean of the Farmer School of Business. And let me tell you a little bit about Aaron. And you'll see it up there, so I'm not going to go through all of that, but exciting. He's worked a long time for the NBA and now heading up their esports initiatives as well, too. He graduated, what do you got here? 96, right? Yep, and was a soccer player for Miami as well. And he'll tell you a lot more about his career and what's kind of going on in the esports. I know we have a lot of folks interested in esports here. And do we have any, we have an esports team, right? If I'm not, who's on the esports team? Anybody here on the esports team? A couple? Yeah, see, we got. So is that varsity sport yet? It is. Okay, there you go. So the world is changing. I'm still playing Pong myself, but I suppose that one of these days I'll get on. If you don't know what Pong is, that just shows you my age, kind of stuff, what it is. But we're thrilled to have Aaron here, and he's going to tell you a lot more about what's going on in the world of the NBA's initiatives on esports. So give a warm Miami welcome to Aaron Ryan.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Up in the rafters, good evening.
Good evening.
I don't know how many of you were assigned to be here, but I appreciate the love and the attendance. Take notes if you need to, and at the end, I will definitely make room for questions. How many Hoops fans we got in the house? How many gamers? Shout out a game you're playing. 2K, I appreciate that. Where'd that come from? Overwatch? All right. Madden? Okay. All right. We'll talk later. We got a watch up in the front here. I need somebody with a watch. Keep me honest. 35 minutes. You're my timekeeper. All right? Because I want to leave time here. I'm going to give you a little bit about my journey at the NBA, which is going to help make a lot more sense once we get to sort of the esports space. Why I got into it, but also why the NBA is involved in it. And I'll tell you about my journey from Miami all the way there, if this works. So, we're going to talk about Miami to 2K League and my journey. We're going to talk about why esports for me and potentially why for you. And then we're going to talk about why esports for the NBA, which may or may not be that clear to the folks in the room, and certainly wasn't clear to me 2 years ago when we started to talk about it. So, quick journey, quick sort of my journey through pictures. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm an avid Vikings fan. I feel decent about the season. We still have some work to do, but I represent my hometown, and a little plug for the upcoming city edition of the Timberwolves uniform, a little bit of a recognition of the artist formerly known as Prince. So I run purple pretty much all day, every day. I fell in love with basketball once I was able to dunk on an 8.5-foot rim. Yes, that's 8.5 feet. This is from 8th grade. I had an affinity and a hunch that brands had more power than just outfitting athletes. I thought that they had the ability to intersect and be a part of conversations that I think this prognostication, even back in the early 90s, now proves to be a place where sports and brands find themselves at the intersection. I played soccer at Miami of Ohio. This photo was taken before I found a barber on campus, and before I decided on a different major because I didn't like calculus. I ended up being a political science and philosophy major, but as you can see, this was taken probably my first 2 weeks on campus. I played soccer at Miami of Ohio for 2.5 seasons after injury and really just trying to widen the scope of my experience here in Ohio, having been from out of town. I made that decision to really focus on my school and really getting to build relationships outside of sports. My first job out of Miami, I drove from Oxford to Secaucus, New Jersey to NBA Entertainment. My first job from 6 p.m. to 2 in the morning was to log highlights of NBA basketball games, which sounds awesome for like 6 weeks. I negotiated to get Friday nights off so that I didn't have to work from 6 p.m. to 2 in the morning, and I could actually get to learn a little bit about New York City. But this photo here was actually taken on Monday in the same building where I worked with hard-coded tapes and logging highlights for producers who worked on shows like Inside Stuff, who built home videos and movies that used to go out in VHS and beta cassettes. Now are all being streamed. And so this room now is equipped to handle 6 live games per night. It manages and produces content for every social media channel for the NBA across the globe. And tonight, depending on how many games there are, there will be anywhere from 65 to 70 people in this space working to make sure that our fans are well equipped with the latest and greatest statistics, highlights, and everything in between. So from there, at the NBA, I went to work in our field production unit in 1998. And one of the first things I was able to work on was a long-form docu-series on the 98 Bulls and really what was supposed to be Michael Jordan's swan song. He ended up going to DC, but this really represented the close of his career. This series that I worked on, Traveling with the Bulls in 98, will come out in 2020 most likely on Netflix. So imagine working on a project, your third season in your career, and the fruits of that labor really still haven't been seen to the public. So that was a great experience for me to work in field production, to learn about what the field was like for our product. First, understanding the content, then being able to go out and curate it, and then finding ways to build from there. I went on to work in our live programming and entertainment division, which really was about bringing the NBA experience and the intersection between lifestyle, music, entertainment, and sports all together. So things like the All-Star Game, things like our draft, bringing global games overseas to places like China, Europe, Japan, bringing Yao Ming back to China for the first time in the early 2000s. So those were my experiences, was really about evangelizing and bringing NBA basketball around the globe and really getting a sense of what the brand was about and what fans around the world were looking to be a part of. I moved into a different division about halfway through my career, recognizing that when you work on projects like this, you learn really quickly how to spend the NBA's money. But I had a real thirst for understanding how to make it. Now remember, in the first couple of weeks of being in Miami, I made a major shift. And so recognizing this, I elected to pursue business school, understanding that I still needed some curriculum and a network of people who understood how the economics of the NBA work, how to manage a P&L, how to create efficient businesses in terms of managing both sides of both the spend and the buy side of the business. And so that's when I went to business school at Cornell, and when I came back, I joined an internal consultancy called Team Marketing and Business Operations. In the industry, it's known as Teambo, and what it really is about is working with team operators, both presidents, owners, and chief revenue officers, on how to most effectively run the revenue sides of their business most notably. So it's things like pricing integrity, dynamic pricing. It's about scaling a business that's built for high demand and low demand circumstances. In sports, a lot of times, in baseball, oftentimes it's weather, it can be trades in basketball, it can be trades in football, but these businesses have externalities that the businesses have to be built to withstand. And so really learning how to identify a best practice and share it across the league with other teams who are obviously going to go through similar demand cycles as each other. And so in the NBA, one of our competitive advantages is we recognize that Cleveland does not compete with Minnesota, and Minnesota does not compete with Golden State. In fact, they're allies in this business, and we were the conduit to really sharing best practices across marketing, sponsorship, and ticket sales. So after you go through being in consulting in the MBA, you gain a hunger to really run your own operation. And so there's a couple paths you take, but there's not that many. You either go on to work for a team, you work in another league, or in my case, I identified one property that the NBA managed from the center, which was the USA Basketball property. The NBA serves as the marketing and sales arm of USA Basketball. So I had the opportunity to run a total P&L, run a sales organization, and really manage a business that had both the basketball and the business side, and was able to build that business over the course of 2 Olympic cycles, leading into 2012 and all the way through 2016. And as 2016 approached, my request and inquiry to the organization was, what are the priorities of this company going forward? Where is the NBA going where I can leverage all of this experience, live programming and entertainment, broadcast operations, production and storytelling, and consulting on the revenue side of our business? Where can I leverage all this in a meaningful way within the company? And the answer was the NBA 2K League. So it brings us full circle, and the reason why I take you through that journey is it's hard to imagine someone going from the core of our sport to a place that I didn't even bring up until now. And you're not talking to somebody who was an avid gamer. You're talking to somebody who's a lifelong fanatic of the sports industry and of the sports business, and recognizing and identifying the common opportunities for esports was what really attracted me to this opportunity. And so I want to share with you what I think are the 3 things that I've learned through this journey that might be beneficial to you as you go on to pursue your own path. One, and I've talked to a handful of students over the course of the day on this, the currency for me in the MBA has been about access to learning. It's something that most managers and most organizations will not deny you. Not every organization can give you a raise, can provide you with a promotion on command, or even navigate movement within functions. But in terms of access to knowledge and learning, that was what my currency has been, and it's paid off in dividends all throughout my career. The second thing is recognizing the attributes of successful people in the organization that you work in. And what I quickly recognized in probably the first 5 years of working at the NBA was that there were 3 things that really successful people at the NBA all had in common. They had an entrepreneurial spirit. Even though they worked inside of a larger corporation, they treated their cube like their bodega. They organized themselves. They got to work without being told what time to clock in. They established and organized their brand as a personal brand that had equity within the company. The second thing was intellectual curiosity. Not everything in larger corporations will be handed to you in a manual or facilitated through a training program. So you always have to ask the second level question, why? Why do we do what we do? Why did we make that decision? Why did we get into that space? What is this? How does this benefit our owners? How does this benefit the ecosystem with which we work within? Why is that market globally recognizable to our brand or advantageous to us in the future? And the third, which is a little bit of a unique twist, which is in highly matrix organizations like the NBA, you have to be politically savvy. And by politically savvy, I mean that in the most positive way, which is to say, recognizing the relationships that you need within an organization before you need them. Creating partnerships with individuals and departments and functions, and exercising and exuding empathy as to what people go through each and every day, so that when you do need to make that phone call, you do need assistance on a project, you do need advice, that it's not the first time you're meeting somebody. And so those 3 things for us at the NBA, I believe are what a lot of successful people in our organization exude. And when you decide where you're going to work, that's something to pay attention to. What is common about those folks that are successful in this company? Where is the equity gravitate to? Where are the people who have weight in what they say and how they make decisions? And start to pick up on some of the common traits there, because those are probably common traits that you need to start to exhibit and gain for yourself. The third thing, which I talked about, and this really starts to paint the picture for why esports made sense for me. It's proximity to what matters in the organization with which you work. And it's proximity to a couple of things. It's proximity to revenue, it's proximity to those with influence, and it's proximity to the priorities of the organization with which you work. So if you recall, at the tail end of my journey, I asked the hard question: what is a major priority of this company where my experiences and my expertise would potentially be of use and valuable? And it was esports was the answer. And so that brings us to why I've already explained why this makes sense for me and what questions I posed to arrive here. And now I'm going to talk a lot more about why esports for the NBA. And the best way for me to start this is to give you a sense of what the 2K League is, not just by describing it, but by showing you.
Live from New York City, it's the inaugural season of the NBA 2K League. Players will be coming downstairs and they'll be getting ready to lock in and lock up.
Magic and Tyre take the lead. They throw it off and Cam throws it down. They go to Boo in the paint. And he will dunk it all over Steve's. Here come the Knicks on the break.
Trying to do a little too much there.
Yay, not go! Get it out of here! Hood, the block, 360! I'm dead. Great hands by the Jazz. And Capello live! Have you met Mel East? Use of ball alone. Can't hit. They don't have a timeout. They gotta go. 4, 3, 2, 1. Grab for the win. Here we go. Plays it
So that's the NBA 2K League, year one. I started 18 months ago on this project without a stadium, without a sense of what type of player we were going to bring into this league, without really a sense of what the dynamic between our fans, our players, and our teams was going to be. And so we got a chance to build a business on the shoulders of two incredibly powerful brands, 2K and the NBA. And so why did we launch the 2K League? It starts with our owners in the NBA being some of the biggest first movers in investing in esports. And so what we've heard from our owners is this is a space where they are looking to invest. They've done it in Overwatch, they've done it in League of Legends, and they really challenged the league to find a way for us to be a part of this growing segment of sports and entertainment. And so as you can see here, these are some of the holdings across the NBA. There's I believe it's over 9 owners that have some kind of stake in another esport other than the NBA. The other thing is esports and the 2K franchise have been exploding, and you've probably heard some of the gaudy statistics, but Twitch as a platform has 15 million active users daily. That's every day there are 15 million people on their platform. It is clearly one of the great sort of proof points of this space having an appetite for consumption. And a lot of times when I'm in front of brands, they say, I get why people play games, but what I don't understand is why people will watch them. And my response is, you actually get it more than you realize. Because you think it's interesting, or someone in your family thinks it's interesting to watch other people buy real estate, bake cakes, judge food, go to diners, drive-ins, and dives. We like to see people do things as experts. We like to hear their opinions. We like to be trained by them. We find excellence and expertise something that is entertaining to us, and this is arguably the most potent segment of that type of behavior when it comes to consumption of content. We recognized also that 82% of our fans, NBA fans, have heard of esports, and a majority of them told us that they're likely to consume it if it's presented in the right manner. And we have a bona fide superstar in a title that's shown year-over-year growth for over a decade, eclipsing 10 million copies sold just this past year. So those are some of the proof points as to why we started to investigate the space. The other thing is in video games, this is arguably one of the best brands in terms of its crossover into lifestyle. So while it has great game mechanics and it has a great game as a foundation, it is a lifestyle brand that has music endorsers, player endorsements, customized sneaker giveaways, music trailers and soundtracks by Travis Scott this year, Drake in previous years. So it is at the epicenter of a lot that is hot in mainstream culture right now, and that puts us in a position that's really, really advantageous in the space and differentiates us from a lot of titles. The other thing is, before this ever even started, there was a version within the game that was poised for esports. A lot of people talk about sports games as not built for esports. Well, Pro-Am is a mode within the game where you do not play as Steph versus LeBron. You play as yourself, and you play on a team with four other players, and you run offenses. You shout out defenses. You play schemes, where it literally plays like basketball with all the tactics and strategy that require real basketball IQ. And so that really positioned us to take the next leap forward. And the ecosystem was incomplete. We had grassroots gaming. We have people playing in their own homes, playing against classmates, cousins, family members, siblings. They were all obviously looking, those who were the best in household, best in dorm, were looking for a next place to play. And so the Pro-Am scene started to create a real destination for the best on the block. It was a place for prize money. It was a place for people from other regions of the country to really test their skills against others from faraway places. But what was missing was that top of the pyramid, the pro gamer opportunity, the opportunity to quit your job, get a 401k, get full benefits, and a salary with prize money potential. And that's what the NBA 2K League created and completed for the ecosystem for 2K. So here is how we segment the market, and this is how we're going to attack it. We're recognizing that there are core, casual, and curious fans that have the potential to help us grow this league. The core is the first two segments on the left of the screen, the 1.6 million daily active users and about 3.5 to 4 million monthly active users. We believe that that is our core. Those are people that are in the game, immersed in the product on a regular basis. So that's our first target. Our second target is, we know loyalties run thick. Whether it's gold and wine in Cleveland or green and white in Boston, people are handed them from generations within a family. And so we recognize that new generations of Celtics fans are going to want to be Celtics crossover gaming fans, A, because their family told them they had to be Celtics fans, but B, because they might love basketball gaming more than basketball itself. And so by bringing over a core of the NBA fan that speaks this language and lives within this world of gaming, we think is a really good opportunity. And the third group, which is ever growing, this number is already outdated. There's over 200 plus million self-declared esports enthusiasts. And this is one of the reasons why we ended up on Twitch as opposed to ESPN. Everybody expected that to be the first place we would go. But the reality of it is, we wanted to be in a place that signaled to esports enthusiasts and to gamers that we understand the dynamic and the opportunity with a platform like Twitch. Our league structure. The problem is with our league is there is a construct within everybody's mind on how a basketball video game might be played as an esport, but we have to get past some of the misconceptions. This is 5-on-5 gameplay. It's not me versus you. It's 10 people playing. The second is we weren't traveling teams home and away from Cleveland to Detroit to Dallas. We were playing in a centralized studio in New York City. And we were leveling the playing field relative to characters. Again, not playing as Steph, not playing as LeBron, but playing as yourself and playing with attributes that you choose in terms of your capabilities within a position. And we wanted to leverage our experience in sports to really pave the path to pro and make it clear for all folks who wanted to pursue this how to do so. And so right now, we're in our 4th or 5th day in qualifier within the game. If you have 2K, you can start your path to pro right now. You can win if you win 100 games and maintain a 50% win record, you will move on to the next stage of qualification, which will be in our combine. Our combine is a smaller group of people, different criteria, and we are judging them on dozens and dozens of data points relative to statistics within the game. So the convergence of esports and traditional sports allows us to leverage a couple of things. One is our experience in live broadcasting of our games. The other is in storytelling. But it's also the leadership of these two organizations that allows us to tell a broader story. So this is a picture of Adam Silver, who came to our studio to talk about the vision of expanding this league. And what he said was he does envision a day in very short order where a team from Shanghai will play against Knicks Gaming. And that's where we want to take this. We believe that there's no boundaries that should really preclude us from doing what we want to do in terms of making this truly a global league with a globally recognized game. Again, unique advantages for us is we already live in the world of celebrating victories. We do trophy presentations. We create celebratory moments in our game. And so being able to leverage that experience and to really sort of crown a champion in our first season has been great. Another advantage we have is we've been talking about mid-season tournaments in the NBA for years. What happened to Knicks Gaming was really incredible. They were a 15 seed in our league. And we made the decision to have a tournament just before the last third of our season, our last trimester effectively, where we were going to have it be an automatic bid tournament, where if you won that tournament, you were automatically the 8th seed at a minimum in the playoffs. This 15 seed upset 6 teams to get into the playoffs and ultimately won our championship. So the idea of building mechanisms within a season where you have a rooting interest throughout the entire season was something that we had been trying to test and learn from in the NBA for quite some time, and we were able to put it to good use right away with this league. People and resources. We have not only a wide team and a wide set of experts within the NBA, we have 17, now 21 teams at work in the markets. And we also have the expertise of Take-Two and its development team to continue to iterate and refine this game. And so this partnership between development and a brand-building marketing organization like the NBA is another reason why this makes a lot of sense for us. It's over 90 partners across our team. So for those of you wondering if sort of mainstream brands and markets are interested in esports, this should be the proof slide in terms of the types of endemic and non-endemic brands who are already making their way into esports, and there's a handful of others on the way. Interesting stories about companies like Leidos and Navy. They're in this space because they recognize that the talent they want to recruit for their organizations are gamers. They speak the language of gaming, and so partnering with esports, especially esports that cross into mainstream, was a strategy for them from a talent recruitment perspective, as opposed to just brand awareness which is the case in some other instances. Local community engagement. Our teams live in the markets with which they represent, because we have infrastructure, The Dallas Mavericks have built a gigantic training facility in Dallas where they're able to host community groups. They're able to play fantasy games and scrimmages with members of the community. And a lot of our other teams are building brick and mortar infrastructure in their markets to be able to engage directly with a local fan, as opposed to just having a digital online fan in the space. Accessibility. There's certainly some people, because they already raised their hand, but does anybody know what you're looking at on the left side of the screen? That's good. Do you know what's happening? What's going on with the score of the game? Okay. It's not complete. I'm glad you know it, but when I look at it, I didn't know it. And the reason why I bring this up is because when you're trying to engage a casual audience, this is pretty intensely core. And so for us, the advantage for us, especially when it comes to engaging brands, is where would you place a brand enhancement within these screens? The reality of it is that for our game, we're in a position to be able to create brand integrations and allow for brands to organically participate in a game that's not only globally recognizable, but it's also E for everyone. So there's very little that's alienating about what we're putting on the screen. And so that's something we talk a lot about. So the key learnings from last season for us. One is our players are starting to become stars. Not only in the sports realm, you see us on the top 10 for SportsCenter, we were on The Jump, we were on Fast Money with our champions. So we are getting to mainstream sport in this mainstream sports dialogue first and foremost. But we're working beyond that. We're starting to create behind-the-scenes access shows. We've been a part of a couple of different pilots being pursued because we're building this infrastructure and we're recognizing a lot of the storytelling we do with our NBA teams and our NBA players off the court is also resonating with casual fans within our space. And so expect us to double down on that. How many of you guys have a Twitch account? If you don't, I would suggest checking it out because I really do believe that it's a peek behind the curtain of what future broadcasting is going to look like for a lot of different channels. What Twitch has the power to do is it allows you to engage with a fan in a meaningful way that allows you to iterate and evolve your broadcast. So one example in the lower left corner is our first 3 broadcasts look nothing like this screen. What this screen will show you is we have POV cameras of all of our players. We are playing in an angle that is called the 2K angle, which is over the shoulder of the point guard looking down at the basket. Those things came out of the chat, which you see on the far right. That's what our fan was telling us they wanted to see. That was how they wanted to consume the game. They wanted to see the players' faces while the action was going on, and they wanted a very specific angle. Try doing that with an ESPN broadcast. Now, it's starting to happen more frequently, but if you would have brought this up 6-7 years ago, it'd be hard to make that kind of a pivot in that short of order. And so that's one of the things that being on Twitch has allowed us to do is really get close to our fan and allow them to help us curate what the streaming experience is going to be like in this league. And there's more to come there. Looking forward, a couple quick things. I've referenced it a couple times. Expect us to get global. Global in terms of bringing tournaments on the road, bringing on franchises in competition, as well as our talent. And that speaks to also this notion of bringing the experience in the studio is electric, but getting that to translate through to the stream comes in the form of live audio, more camera angles, more storytelling, more stories about human interest and what's at stake for the individuals who are pursuing this dream, which really wasn't possible 19 months ago. More franchises. We've added 4 franchises to this season. We were 17 last year. We've added some pretty big markets. Brooklyn, Minneapolis, LA, Atlanta, all coming on board to make 21 teams this upcoming season. And diversity. We've said it publicly. When you are built on a game that really people are only identified as a gamer tag, you really don't know what you're going to get at first. And frankly, we were disappointed that there wasn't a female that made it into the top 102 players and was drafted in year one. And so we're spending a lot of time understanding what the barriers to entry are for elite female gamers and working to make sure that this is an opportunity for them as much as it is for everybody else. And the space has some challenges, but as an organization who's always led the way in terms of diversity and inclusion, we will continue to do so and make this dream a reality for women just the same. The other thing is internationally. We believe that there's players that are good enough to be in this league all over the world, and so we want to find ways to make sure that they have access to becoming a part of what we're doing as well. Those are really the story behind my journey from Miami to the 2K League. It starts to explain in terms of how I view and development for myself inside of an organization that I've been a part of for a long time, and also a little bit of a better understanding of why the NBA has gotten into esports through really leadership from our ownership, also the idea of growing our fan base and giving access to a new group of fans, and really developing a product that can stand on its own and will evolve over time. So now I'm open for any questions that you have about either my journey, why I chose esports, or why the NBA is involved.
So you talked a lot about your successes within your career. Do you have any failures that you would like to tell us about?
Yes. She's asking me about my failures. Well, darn it, that's a tough question. No, there was a couple times where I started to want to pursue jobs outside the NBA for sort of faster advancement. And in the early 2000s, when there was a ton of internet companies coming on board, I actually left the NBA for 6.5 weeks, believe it or not. It's not a story I tell publicly very often, but it was to pursue the wrong thing. It was to pursue titles and advancement as opposed to learning. I thought I was going to learn there, but I could tell after being there very quickly that I left for the wrong reasons. But because I had built the relationships and the equity in the NBA, I humbly went back with my tail between my legs, and they gave me my job back. Other questions?
You talked earlier about how you have to keep business and make sure that you're not starstruck. Was there ever a time where it was just somebody you always wanted to see kind of that you were starstruck in that moment?
He's asking me about any sort of interactions with players or celebrities that I've had. Meeting Bill Russell is pretty cool. The guy has more rings than he has fingers, so spending time with him has been great. Not much else. I really view our players, our legends, our partners, and the brands we work with as our partners, and I think that's what's allowed me to pursue a lot of this. I want a question from all the way up top. Who's bold enough? Go for it.
Ron or MJ?
Woo!
And why?
Oh, man. You got to cut this out of the video. Listen, I have spent a lot of time with both of them, and I think I'm from an era that really appreciated MJ's style of leadership. It probably was for its time. He was a tough teammate, but the kind of teammate that made a lot of players that never really would have never won a championship without him. He made them great. And if you look at the pedigree of someone like a Steve Kerr and what I think he would attribute to that run with the Bulls and why it's put him in a position to be poised as a leader of a new future potential dynasty, I'm in the MJ camp.
Hi, my name is Ian. I'm a freshman here at Miami University as part of multicultural. My question would be, what advice would you give to a student that is decided on what to do?
So, advice for a student that's not sure what career they're interested in. I think you have to, I brought this up earlier. What are the things that give you goosebumps? What are the things you're passionate about? What are the things you find yourself when you don't have to consuming? If it's content, if it's what you read, if it's sites that you follow, if it's articles within news and entertainment, if it's the types of TED Talks you would watch. Start to gauge the things that you're passionate about, and then try to create and map out what are career paths that are attached to that in some way. And it doesn't need to be so closely linked that it's right next. Just find a path where it's in some reasonable proximity to. Great. So the question was, in a player-driven league like the NBA, and also a player-driven dynamic, even in a game like League of Legends, are we looking to elevate just the person or the character, which would be otherwise known as the avatar? And I think there's an opportunity to link and elevate both. I think we start with the person, but as we start to investigate, as an example, higher res face scans of our archetypes and our avatars. I could see a world in which profile pages actually have the human headshot, and they also highlight the avatar, at least in terms of the build that they choose or the archetype mix that they choose.
So going about this, bringing the NBA and books together, did you run into a lot of doubters, and if so, how did you build it?
The question is whether, as we were pursuing this and starting to build the proposition, did we run into doubters? Yes, we do run into doubters, but it's oftentimes just us talking past them and not taking the time to explain what we're doing. And that cuts across a lot of things, which is when you are in a conversation where there's apparent misunderstanding, it's hard to believe in what we're doing. So even when we're having this conversation, I recognize that there's still probably things I breezed past that you still don't quite recognize. But that's one slide that I put up here, which is we are playing 5-on-5. We are not playing in Cleveland and Detroit. We are not playing as Steph and LeBron. That slide was born out of too many conversations where I got blank stares and I realized that I was assuming people were tracking. And so in this industry, you really have to take that extra breath and make sure that your audience is tracking. Because once they are, I think there's a lot of promise within it. One more up top. Anybody? Over here.
So, do you work with developers and work on the playability of the game so that those people kind of know their around?
We work with the developers, we work with our players, and we work with the competition committee. So I'm flying out to Novato, California next week to meet with the development team to talk about the year 2 build. We also are talking about when and how we're going to stage what they really call is our patches. And patches in games really try to identify exploits. Gamers in a pro league are so good, they find indefensible moves, which is hard to imagine. Like, imagine creating the ultimate, digital hook shot that cannot be defended. We actually don't want that in the game very long because the game and the viewability of the game becomes really boring. So we're talking to the developers, but we're also saying to the players, what are you guys up to? What tricks are you using? What's being exploited? Why is everybody playing this singular style of play for a period of time? And so what's really common in esports is to change what they call the meta of the game, the competitive makeup of the game, or exploits. And so you have to be in close proximity or in conversation with the developers, otherwise the game will run amok. It's a fantastic question. How do you deal with toxic players? You establish a code of conduct, you screen for it before they get in your league, and you make the bar of integrity as high as possible, and you continue to reinforce it through fines and suspensions like professional sports do. You professionalize the space, and you make it as uninviting as possible. And you stay consistent with it and continue to refine it over time, and you start to elevate and highlight players who exude the type of professionalism you're hoping your league is dominated by. Go ahead. Say that again? Yeah, so people who chat that are toxic. One powerful dynamic within the Twitch platform, and I'm hoping it actually permeates across a broader social ecosystem, is this notion of modding. And modding is having community advocates, community influencers who actually will help you ban, help you course correct toxic narratives within your chat. And you give people warnings, you redirect the conversation, you alienate folks who are there for the wrong reasons. And so we have, I think by the end of the season, we had 20 plus mods in our chat, really kind of self-policing the chatter. And we're going to continue to refine that over time.
I was watching the sports leagues about it, but you guys have a chance to look at the
I think it's on the long-term roadmap. I think short-term centralized studio is a good model for us. However, starting to bring the show on the road next season, taking a couple of our sort of elevated tournaments and taking them to other markets will be the place we start. And then I think over time you'll see us pursue localized gameplay.
Is there a reason that NBA, like teams that sponsor the esports teams, are there a reason that brands are different specifically?
Yeah, so the question was, is there a reason that the brands for the 2K League teams is different than the parent company? We want to create equity in a completely separate IP and an identity construct that actually, again, gives them another brand to stand up and build equity around. And so we did want to, with a lot of our brands, I didn't have it up very long, but they are derivatives of the parent company. So they're recognizable in color, they're recognizable a lot of times in font type, but they are uniquely their own. And it gives us an opportunity to really create a separate identity for folks to latch onto. I saw something in the middle section back here. Hat back. You still got something? Ooh. Dang, man. Favorite player of all time. I mean, I got two, but it's because it's where I grew up. I grew up in Minneapolis, and part of my childhood was in Chicago. MJ and KG. It's really that easy. Current day players, I really admire Klay Thompson. I have connection to him and seeing him, how hard he works and how it's paying off, but he's also a favorite. Yo. That's a fantastic question. The question was, are there different leagues for different consoles? No, we actually allow both consoles to participate in qualifier and combine, but when you get to the league, we play on Alienware. And we chose Alienware for a couple of reasons, one of which was performance, speed, clarity, and just the dynamic graphics that a powerful gaming PC provides, but also that it is controller agnostic. You can use an Xbox controller, you can use a SCUF, which happens to be a brand that we're partnering with, or you can use a PlayStation controller. So we didn't want players to be in a predicament in terms of choosing what they want to play on. Good question.
How important are streamers in terms of you guys developing 2K as a game?
Streamers. How important are streamers in terms of developing the game? incredibly important. So social media influencers that we're partnering with. We also are taking our players, not only through the technical regimen of having a streaming setup, but also how to manage their brand within a stream. And we're bringing Twitch out to train with our players. We're bringing big-time streamers to be in front of our players to teach them how to do this, how to curate a following, how to build content, how to create regular time occurrences with which they stream. So it's a critical part of building their brands and ultimately building the league. Good question. Can you speak up?
Boy, totally small. College,
How do you handle the headwinds of the stereotype of gamers? You must be talking about the classic 15-year-old boy who's in his basement with Doritos and Red Bull. If I hear that 7 times a week, that's too few. I'll tell you right now that having our teams and our players live in market, leverage the ecosystem of a professional basketball team has given us a couple of really cool insights. One is physical fitness, posture, sleep management, diet, eye health, and an overall sort of situational leadership are things that this whole ecosystem is going to learn a lot about over the course of the next couple of years, because performance is tied to health. Sleep does affect performance. Eye health is connected to what you eat. And so we took our players through this conversation about posture, fitness, endurance. And so you're going to see brands like us, players within our leagues, who are super fit and super dialed in for all these reasons. And I think bringing in brands that can actually help authenticate that will start to change the narrative.
You kind of talked about it for a second, but as opposed to like Riot Gaming, both on the league and the mechanics of the game and the game design, do you had any issues with like Take-Two and the NBA collaborating on both parts of that?
So the question was about any challenges with development issues with Take-Two and the NBA. We've been in business with them for 20 years as a licensing partner. So we have pretty regularly occurring conversations. I think really what we have to do is scale that expertise. The same people who build the commercial game that came out in September are the same people that work on our build. And there's only so many hours in a day. And so finding ways to expand finding ways to expand the human capital, the amount of resources, and the expertise that can help as we kind of grow at a pace that's only going to pick up from here, that's a big part of the conversation.
One last question.
One last question. Who's got it?
What do you think was your greatest challenge in help getting the NBA sports league?
Greatest challenge, it's hard to pin down one. It's hard to start a business in an industry that a lot of your stakeholders are unaware of. So it's the uncertainty of it all, right? It's you can't leverage precedent from either world exclusively or entirely. You have to do your research on esports, you have to leverage your expertise in sports, and not pick one or the other, but start to actually forge your own path. And when you do that, it's stressful because there's a lot of uncertainty. I think we made some really good early bets, and we've built a brand and a vision for the brand that people are recognizing. Thanks for coming.
For any Speedway players, the Miami University esports, the varsity sports team is recruiting an NBA 2K varsity team.